today we are going out to do some suspension testing.
X-Fusion metric fork. Sid was making fun of me.
Here we go, first time down.
But she sure looked fast.
It feels like the back end is kicking.
Last time I went totally open, now I'm gonna go totally closed. Don't get frustrated if you can't feel a big difference.
Sped my rebound up a lot.
All right, here comes Sid.
Felt faster, but still pretty harsh. Hi everybody, welcome back to our channel. I'm Sid.
And I'm Mackie.
Today we are back in Tucson. Hope you've enjoyed our vlogs from Sedona. We had so much fun up there.
Such a good trip.
Now we're back. We've got another few weeks of just training. This past week we've been training a lot, so haven't really been vlogging that. But today we are going out to do some suspension testing. And we've gotten a lot of questions about suspension testing, and it's hard to answer those because it really is a process and it's really personal. So we figured we would just sort of take you guys along and show you how we're doing it, and hopefully we can get things dialed in. First, we have some other maintenance stuff that we're doing before we head out. New saddle. Okay, so this is the Ergon saddles. What is it called?
Maybe the other side?
I don't know if it has a name, but it's their new women's saddle, which I'm pretty excited about. A few weeks ago, got a message saying, do you want to try our new women's saddle? Guess what? It comes in 150 millimeters, so I'm pretty psyched. Since I am super anal about my saddle position, and we have to get this exactly right, we are measuring first the current angle of my saddle. Step 2 is to measure the height.
And then the last thing we're gonna measure is from the tip of Sid's saddle to the center of the...
This thing's kind of in the way.
No, it's the center of that guy.
There's literally no part of bicycle maintenance that I hate more than trying to get a saddle on. It's literally the worst. Okay, that could be worse.
The reason we're so obsessive about this is that on a bicycle, if you are pedaling a lot, you're in the same position and you're moving over and over quite a bit. And so that repetitive movement can cause really, it can be good or it can be really bad if you have your seat off. So we're being really obsessive about to make sure the seat's in exactly the same position. I have a ridiculously worn rear tire. I've been riding in Tucson where it's rocky and sharp, and in Sedona where it's slick rock, and that destroys tires. We just got a shipment from Vittoria of a Morsa with a new compound that they're testing. And so I am supposed to go out and try riding it and see how quickly it wears, because they wanted to see how it feels, how well it wears. So I'm gonna throw this on because I happen to have a tire that needs to be replaced anyway. I've got my awesome bike shop work apron on. I've been using the Huck Norris for a while. It seems to help with avoiding pinch flats. I will be testing out a different one later this year, so make sure to stay tuned. So we're using Slime's premium tubeless sealant, which we really like. If you guys haven't seen our video on how to install a tubeless tire with a floor pump, you should check that out. We'll put a link up there. But this trick that I'm using right here of seating the tire first makes a big difference. And I actually can seat a tire with a floor pump. That being said, I have this Shimano Charger pump, and I'm gonna use it because there's no reason not to. There we go.
All right, time to ride. Well, time to drive and then ride. All right, there we go. And rough.
We made sure to set them up the way we always set them up. So same tire pressures, good oil and chain, all that kind of stuff. because what you really want for suspension testing is for everything else to be the same. You don't want any new variables. You don't want to be trying a new tire that you've never tried before. Like I have a new tire, but it's a tread pattern that I know. So you don't want to be trying something that's brand new. New tires, new wheels, new brakes, you know, anything like that. You could be like, oh, this feels really weird, and think it's the suspension, but actually it's whatever other thing you changed. On our DEFCONs, we are running X-Fusion suspension. So the X-Fusion metric fork, doom, 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 and the X-Fusion vector coil shock. So for these, they have high speed compression, low speed compression, and rebound are the adjustments we can make.
We are riding up the pavement in like the worst wind ever, as you can probably hear. Cranking like almost 200 watts, going about 0 miles an hour. So that's super fun.
We're actually gonna go a little bit up Bug Springs and find a good spot to do some testing, because there's some good rocky stuff over there. Sid was making fun of me for telling you guys that you shouldn't change anything before you test suspension, right after we just showed you guys that she put a new saddle on and I put a new tire on. So I wanted to clarify that a little bit. The reason I put a new tire on is because I didn't want having a totally worn out tire to affect how my suspension felt. You know, I didn't want me to be like, oh, it feels really sketchy, but that was actually because I had no knobs on my tire. And Sid put a new saddle on, but since we're testing our suspension downhill, she will not be sitting on her saddle, so it won't have any effect on the suspension. Before we came up here, we set the initial sag for our suspension. I'm running mine at about 25%. I think we set yours, Sid's, to about 25% as well. What we're gonna do today is dial in some of the adjustments. The basic adjustments on these bikes are high speed compression, low speed compression, and rebound. We'll start with rebound. It's kind of the easiest to understand.
Rebound.
So rebound is how quickly it comes back up after she compresses it. The starting point that Sid and I use is we want it to rebound quickly enough that the tire almost leaves the ground.
But not quite.
Yeah, but not quite. Then high and low speed compression, they're the kind of complicated ones. It has nothing to do with how fast you're going. It has to do with how fast the piston is moving in the shock or fork. Landing a jump is an example of high speed compression. Braking bumps are a good example of low speed compression. This section that we just got to, kind of nice. It's got a couple of turns in there, which will be good for, you know, making sure you have the low speed compression platform for the corners. It's got some chundery stuff, which I think will be good for both. There's some bigger hits that we can use for the high speed compression, and then some choppy stuff, which will be good for the low speed compression. And then the rebound, we'll just be adjusting that as we feel. I'm just gonna crank settings like all the way one way and see how it feels, and then crank it all the way the other way and see how it feels, and then try to find a middle ground. Low speed compression all the way off. So honestly, it didn't feel as bad as I expected it to. That being said, it did feel like when I compressed to like pop out of something, it compressed deeper, which just wasn't what I was used to. And I think, you know, with a lot of turns and at even higher speeds, I definitely would lose that platform when I wanted it.
First time down, I'm just gonna leave it as I've been riding for about, I think I've had these settings for about a week. So gonna leave everything as is, ride the section, go pretty fast, and then try to explain to Mackie what it feels like. And then he can tell me what to change, because I am not good at this game at all. But I'm just gonna try to notice and observe and hopefully explain what I'm feeling in a way that makes sense.
Well, she sure looked fast. Let's see how it felt.
Okay,
What'd you think?
So, felt good on corners.
Okay.
Front end is not very responsive when I go to like bunny hop something.
Okay.
Like it feels like the back end is kicking more than the front.
Does the front feel too slow or does the back feel too fast?
Front feels too slow.
Front feels too slow, okay.
So I'm gonna guess and then you're gonna tell me
All right.
if that's right or not. I think that means my rebound is too slow in the front.
Yeah, that would be my guess also.
So maybe we'll speed it up a few clicks.
Yeah, I would definitely do more than one click. I'd do more dramatic changes.
For the 10 millionth time, will you tell me which way to turn the knob?
For rebound, the way to think about it is there's a hole that oil is going through, and that's what allows your fork to extend again. So if you want the fork to move faster, you have to open the hole so the oil can move through faster. If you wanted to open something, you would unscrew the cap. So if you want to speed up your rebound, you unscrew the rebound knob.
1, 2, we'll just go full hog. We'll do 4 clicks.
Okay, 4 clicks, rebound sped up.
I'm gonna be bouncing all over the place.
Last time I went totally open on compression, now I'm gonna go totally closed on low speed compression. We'll see how it feels. Okay, it definitely felt harsher that time, which is what I would have expected. So, once again, not terrible. Like, it makes me realize how difficult this stuff is, because the difference between fully closed and fully open on low speed compression was noticeable, but it wasn't like blow my mind, this is terrible, this is amazing sort of noticeable. So if you are doing this, don't get frustrated if you can't feel a big difference. I'll be the first to say that suspension setup is really hard. It's really hard to feel the difference in high speed and low speed especially. Rebound is a little bit more obvious because if you do, 3-4 clicks, you'll feel your fork slow down or speed up significantly. So that's my recommendation, is dramatic changes initially until you start feeling what those changes are doing. And then you can start dialing it in, like 1 click, 2 clicks to a finer, more precise point.
I sped my rebound up a lot, 4 clicks. So we will see how it feels. My guess is it's gonna feel a little bouncy and I'll probably like put it down a few clicks. But what we learned with suspension is it's better to turn it too far and then you notice the difference and then you can kind of like find that middle ground.
How did it feel?
It felt the same, so obviously I'm retarded. Can we see the slow-mo? Because it happened right as I was passing you on the camera and it felt like where I go to get my front wheel up and it doesn't go. Slow. Like there. Yeah, actually that was it. I think I was trying to like pop. Instead it just sucked it all up.
Okay, so pause and hear me out here. So instead of it, like you felt like you weren't getting enough pop, but maybe what it is the rebound was so fast that it's like springing back down instead of staying up in the air you want.
Maybe I'll do 8 clicks the other way.
Yeah, so do it 4 clicks slower than it was before.
Which would be 8
yeah,
clicks.
8 clicks and then see how see how that feels.
Okay.
All right.
Cool.
So if we had big team support, what we'd do is have a driver and a couple of mechanics in like a 1 to 2 minute section, and they would drive us up and drop us off at the top with a certain setting, and then we would ride down and they would time our descent, and then we would talk about how it felt and they'd make some adjustments and then we'd go back up and we'd do that again. This time I'm gonna go all the way open and then go 3 clicks closed on the low speed compression. See how that feels. Didn't feel as harsh, so that's good. Was hard to tell if I had enough platform. I think it felt a little squishy for some of the corners. I think I am gonna add a couple more clicks, which will put me back about where I started at around 6, which is about halfway on this fork. So I guess I had done a decent job before just by feel of getting it to the right spot. That's good.
Okay, we have now turned my rebound all the way the other way to slow, which sort of makes sense now that I've had some time to think about it, but before I get too committed to like, that makes total sense, let's ride it and see what happens. That was way better. I don't feel like I rode as well on that time, but I think that was just me. But I might have been going faster.
We're sort of beginning to run out of sunlight, so I think we're gonna start heading down.
I don't think it feels great, but it did feel fast, so it might be better.
You were going fast.
Yeah. I think I hyperanalyze and I don't know, but I think we like discovered some points of improvement.
It just makes me realize that these suspension nowadays is so good.
Yeah.
And honestly, these adjustments are so minuscule. I started wondering the same. Oh, I made it back. There's still some light.
All right, we are done. That was kind of a long afternoon. To be honest, I don't think either of us really loves doing suspension testing. I don't think anybody does.
Yeah.
It sort of like it's like too much thinking, you know? It takes the fun out of riding, and then you're like
thinking about that, then like you're like, oh, maybe it feels weird, but like maybe
you're just overthinking it. But it is, yeah. I think, important to do. I'm sure someone's gonna comment and be like, you should get a shock whiz. I think that'd be fun to try. But even if you have used that, like going out and doing this kind of stuff is really helpful, because you won't always have your shock whiz like in the middle of a long ride when you're like, something feels off, you know? So having a basic understanding of it, which, as I'm sure you saw in this video, I barely do. I now have some ideas of like what I should mess with the next time things don't feel great.
It sounded like your bike felt better.
I think it did. It felt faster, but still pretty harsh. But we're pretty tired.
Yeah.
We've had a big training week, so it's possible that was it. So yeah, it's a never-ending process. You don't like just go out one day and like have a perfectly dialed bike. Because even if you did, like terrain is different, and so
I would say my takeaway is that this stuff is really hard, and like, you know, it's okay to be like, I just don't feel that much difference. Like for me, between fully open and fully closed in my high and low speed, I was like, yeah, I could feel a difference, but it wasn't that significant, and I am fairly attuned to how my bicycle feels. So I think it speaks to how good suspension is nowadays.
We're lucky to be running some pretty high-end suspension.
Yeah. Well, and I think the other thing is that Rebound and Sag are the easier to adjust and probably the more important, in my opinion. Like, if you've got your Sag set up okay, then the high and low speed compression is like dialing it in. But if you don't have your Sag set up, nothing's gonna feel good. Rebound is pretty obvious. Like, you do 4 clicks and you're like, okay, it feels worse or better or different at least. Whereas the other ones, it's a lot harder to do. I've spent 2 years riding this same frame. Like in 2016 it was red, but it was the same frame. I've been running the same suspension both years. I've had a lot of time to get this stuff dialed in, and I have it pretty well dialed in. Like when I changed stuff, I was like, I think I liked it better before.
So if you're a super suspension geek, join us on Patreon. We'll put all of the exact numbers for our suspension on there, and we'll probably do that in the future too. Like if we go to Moab, we'll be like, hey, this is our suspension setup for Moab versus like, and how it was different from here in Tucson, which is kind of classic desert riding. So yeah, and a big shout out to everybody on Patreon. We hit our gimbal numbers, so we are in the process of deciding what gimbal to get. We obviously don't have one yet. That's why we're still using these guys. But we're really excited about that, and you guys coming soon.
are awesome. Coming
Gimbals.
soon. Yeah. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.